So today is all about aggregate functions. And, once again, I highly suggest you take notes. I also suggest you follow along. So I'm first going to describe what each of the functions are. Okay? Let me make sure my audio is on. Okay. You got a question? No. We had a lab day last Wednesday. We're not going to go over the lab today. I can talk to you in office hour if you want, but I can't go over the lab today. Okay, so some functions you need to know. Like I said, I suggest you take notes. Max. Okay, max function is going to return the maximum value. So it's going to return the highest value for whatever variable you apply this to. And by the way, these are all going inside of select. Okay? Converse to max, of course, we have min. Min, of course, is going to return the minimum value, smallest value. Count. Count is going to return the number of observations, and on top of that, if we apply conditions to it with the where statement, then it will return the number of observations that meet this criteria. So it's a pretty useful thing to have. AVG, of course, is going to return the average of the variable or variables we apply inside of the select. Sum, of course, is going to return the addition of whatever variables we apply. Okay, these are the 5 primary functions. Any questions so far? Everyone understands these 5 functions. Okay, something else to know is as. Okay, as is going to allow us to cast a, let's call it cast a column. So let's say we did a select statement, and we're selecting the average of sales. Okay, so if we leave that as is, if we just have select average, and I'm kind of out of room here, sale from whatever the sales table is called. Let's call it transaction. This will work just fine. It's going to give us the average sale. However, in the output, it's going to return it as AVG sale, exactly as we typed it. Okay, what we could do is we could do something like select AVG sale as, what should we call this? Who has a preference for what this variable is called? How about average sales? From transaction. Okay? We're just casting it with the as operator. Any questions about as or anything else? Okay? Some other things to know. We have various mathematical operators, of course. We have our good friend, the plus symbol. Okay, so the plus symbol, anyone want to take a stab at what that may do? What does plus do? It adds, that's exactly right. So we could add different columns together. Okay? Minus symbol. It's going to subtract different columns together. Divide. Of course, that's going to be used for division. And we have an asterisk. Okay? So, it's a little bit tricky because we've already said the asterisk is the wild card inside of select. So, for example, we could do select star from, and then whatever table we wanted to use. We could do that. It's also used for multiplication. Is that a little bit tricky? So if we're multiplying 2 variables together, or 2 columns together, I should say, we're going to use it in that context. Boon. I couldn't hear that? Yeah. Okay. And like I say, I know it's a little bit tricky. It'd be nice if there were a different way to do it, but there's not. Okay. So, now this is all inside of select up to this point. I'm going to shift colors over to blue. Okay. Now we're going to do stuff in the where clause. So where is where we have what? What is the where part of the select statement for? Condition is exactly correct. So if we think back to conditional logic from Excel, we had things like greater than, less than, not equal, or this is how we're going to do it, but mostly you can also, of course, do it this way. It depends on which implementation of SQL you're using. So both of these mean not equal. Literally have the equal symbol will be for a condition where we're making sure something is equal. Lots of different things we can do. So like I said, this is all going inside of where. So make sure you understand that. All right. Any questions up to this point? Okay, just a few more things we can have inside of where. We can have and we can have or. Okay, these are the two other things to know inside of the where. So for example, let's say we want to have multiple conditions inside of where. We don't just want to see if something is greater than something. We also want to see if it's less than something. We would just use our good friend the and. And if we're seeing if it's greater or less, we just use or. Okay, and we're going to see examples of all this. But up to this point, is anyone confused on anything? Okay. So, what we're going to do is go into Canvas. I posted a new file that has a new table. So, let's just take a quick look at our good friend Canvas. See what we've got there. Okay. So, if we scroll down, I added SQL class file 2. So, that's what we're going to be using, as well as the import inventory.csv. So if you're following along, go ahead and download both of those. I'll give you just a minute to do so. So download this SQL class file.txt as well as import inventory.csv. Boom. Yeah, so you don't have MySQL Workbench and MySQL Server installed on the lab machines, unfortunately. Yeah. You're having a hard time with what? How much storage do you have? It's going to be more than 64. Let me take a quick look. Let me take a look with you after class. Any other questions? Yeah. So in Canvas, it's going to be the bottom two things. SQL class file 2 and import inventory.csv. Any other questions? All right. So go ahead and open up MySQL Workbench and navigate to whatever connection you're using. In my case, I'm using BA223.4 for for this class. It's the fourth section. So just go ahead and open that up. It's going to take you to a blank query. Go to that text file you just downloaded. And all he wants to do is just copy and paste the contents of that text file. Okay. So you should still have your schema marked as default. So in this case, we only have one schema. It's the SYS schema. So if it's not marked as default, go ahead and right-click on it and go to Set as Default Schema. But in my case, you can tell it's bolded, which means what? Whoops. Means it's already set as default. Okay, so question. I'm not sure where you are. Let me take a look at it. Any questions? So just go to schemas right there, where it says schemas. All right. So last class we created the table for person, course, section, and registration. Now, you all remember that I take participation in here. So with that in mind, who wants to walk me through the, just kind of describing the different parts of the registration table? Who wants to do that for us? Boone, go for it. Well, let's back up a little bit. Let's go to this very first part of this creation statement. What's the very first thing there? All right, and is create, tell me about that a little bit. So you're making something new, right? And the table is telling us we're making a new table. Okay? Well, what are we calling that table? Registration. And then what do we do after that? Okay. So now let's talk about this CRM. What can you tell me about it? Yeah, numeric value. Which means what? Yeah, it can't be missing. Okay. And then what do we use if we want to have multiple columns inside of a new table? How do we sort of separate those out? So it's going to be this comma right here. Okay. And then we have this ID number. What can you tell me about it? Okay. Exactly right. And what's the primary key for this table going to be? And what type of primary key? What do we call that type of primary key? So it starts with a C. So it's comprised of multiple columns. So what do we call that? Yeah, composite key, exactly. Okay, then what on earth is this stuff? Let's say I forgot what it was. Walk me through what this is. Starting, whoops. Like I say, this touchpad is kind of crazy sometimes. I apologize for that. So what is this? So let's back up. This entire statement right here, what is this entire statement doing? Go for it, Boone. So not exactly. So I'll go ahead and walk through this because we didn't talk a ton about this. This constraint is something we do in MySQL specifically. You can have constraints in other implementations of SQL, but the way you do foreign keys is a little bit different in MySQL than other SQL implementations. What you do is you apply a constraint. You call the constraint whatever you want as long as it's logical. So here I use student exists for making sure the student exists in the person table. So we're applying the foreign key right here as ID number, and you have to say for the foreign key where it's coming from. So in that case, what we're saying is it's referencing the person table for this ID number column. Now, like I said before, you don't have to have the columns name the same thing in the different tables. So if you had this called, instead of IDno, let's say you called it ID number inside the registration table and IDno inside of the person table. All you have to do is just make sure you have them listed properly inside of both of their things here. So foreign key, you would list it as it is inside of this registration table. And the person table, you just list it as you do inside the person table. Okay? So, does that make sense? Any other questions? Yeah. Okay. Let me take a look at it with you after class, okay? So, let's go ahead and create this inventory table. So what we're going to do is just go ahead and select this create statement. Just go ahead and highlight the whole thing and just execute it. Now, on mine, I've already created the inventory table. So what do I do to get rid of the inventory table I've created? It's one of the 5 primary SQL functions. Drop is exactly right. So I drop table inventory. Okay? I just run this guy right here. And now I don't have an inventory table anymore. So if I refresh this, no table for inventory. Okay. So let's just briefly go through this. It's pretty similar to the other tables we've done. We always start off with create, say what we're creating, which is a table. Table name is going to be inventory. Open up our parentheses. We have 3 attributes in this table, or 3, I should say, columns in this table. Item number, big int, not null. Item quantity is also a big int, not null. And item price, big int. So, which of these 3 can be missing? Which of these 3 columns? Boom. Item price, because we don't specify not null for this. That will mean the item didn't have a price. Doesn't mean the item is free. It means we don't have a price assigned to it. Okay? So what's the primary key of this table? Boom. Item number is exactly correct. So we assign the primary key down here. And then, of course, we close off the parentheses, end it with our good friend, the semicolon. So now, just going to create this table. Go ahead and refresh. And someone else want to remind me how I can import data. Who wants to walk me through that process? Go for it. Tyler? Okay. This guy right here, the spreadsheet with a thunderbolt. Okay. Now, this is a little bit of a trick question on here, but we'll get to that. So we browse for the file, right? So it's going to be this one right here, correct? Okay, what do I do now? That's right. Okay, I got an error message. What do we do? That's right. Always ignore the error messages. That's probably not good advice for life, but that's fine for this class. So put it in the right table. Now what? Okay, not quite. What do I need to do on here? It's a trick question. So we know we have 3 columns inside the table. So how many columns do we have here? Okay, so how do I fix that? Exactly right. Okay, this unknown column, to be honest with you, I don't know exactly why it's in here, but it is in here. Okay, it's not inside the table. So we're just going to uncheck it, hit next, 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 and finish. Okay, so how do I double check? What are the two ways to double check that I have this in here? Two ways. Yeah, run the select statement. That's certainly one way. The other way, of course, is to refresh right here. So looking at this, we have all 31 observations. That's pretty good, isn't it? Okay. Is everyone with me up to this point? So let's just go through some basic select statements here. So right here I have select item number, item quantity, and item price from the inventory table. Okay. So we're just doing a basic select statement. So I run that, and then look at that. I have those three columns. It returns all of the results. Let's do a little bit of review. So let's say that I didn't like the order of the columns. Say I wanted the columns in a different order. How do I change the order of the columns in the output? Boom. Exactly. So let's say I want to put item price first. What do I do? Sure, that's exactly right. Okay. So let's say I want item quality second. It's all about the order they are in the select statement. Okay? Is everyone clear on that? So if we run this, the order, of course, will be item number, item quantity, item price. If we run this, if I can select it, it's going to be item price, item quantity, item number, because that's the order we put the columns inside of the select statement up here. Okay, now let's say that we don't like the order of this. Okay, maybe we want to have item number, but instead of going from smallest to largest, let's say we want it to go from largest to smallest. Okay, how do I do that? It's either going to be select, from, group by, having, or order by. Which of those we're going to use? Boom. Order by is exactly right. And we're going to order by, how about item no? Okay. So this gives it to us by default in ascending order. It's going to start from the bottom, work to the top. But what do I do if I don't like that? Let's say I wanted to start from the top and work our way down. How do I change this to do that? Okay, so there's two operators I can use. Make sure you know these. Ascend and descend. And descend is going to be DESC. So I just apply that at the end after the column name. And now, starts from the top and works our way down. Okay. If I wanted to specify ascending order, it's going to be ASC. Is everyone clear on that? Ascend and descend. So we're going to use descend, DESC. And that's going to allow us to start at the top, work our way down. Okay, so that's just a little review from last class. Any questions about it so far? All right, let's do some different aggregate functions here. So we've got select. Now, instead of just saying the column name, we're applying one of these aggregate functions to it. In this case, we're getting the max item quantity from the inventory table. Okay, so we're just going to run this, and it just returns us the max, which is, of course, 92. Now let's say we also want to know the item number for this. Okay, so we can certainly select the item number as well. Okay, that's certainly something we could do. We're not going to do that at this exact time, though. So we're going to move on to min. So if we want to select the minimum item price from inventory, We can certainly do that. Okay, so we're just doing select, using the min function, applying that to item price, seeing what the cheapest item is from our inventory table. Okay, so we just run this, and gives us $239. Okay, so like I said before, we can certainly also figure out what item that actually is. So item no minimum price. And of course that tells us item 1. All right. So we could also, of course, do average this same way. Get the average item price. So you just select, use average, item price from inventory. Okay, so today we're staying inside of one single table. Next class we're going to pick up with joins. We're not done yet. I'm just saying next class it'll be a little bit more interesting than a single table. Okay, so this tells us the average item price is going to be $4,928, assuming this is expressed in dollars. Here's a pop question for someone. What if I wanted to find the average item quantity? What would I do? What would that select statement look like? Select, not count, getting the average item quantity. So I've got 31 items. I want to see what's the average amount that I have of each item. How would I do that? Go for it. Average item quantity from, where'd you say from? Inventory. That's exactly right. Okay. And like I said, I do apologize. Sometimes this touchpad's a little bit excited. Okay. So of course that's going to return 46. Now I'll give you guys a little secret. Okay, when I was making this, I just used random variables. For the first item quantity, I used random variable between 1 and 100. For the item price, I was either 1 in 100,000 or 1 in a million. Let me see. Maybe it's 1 in 10,000 actually, because you'd expect it to be right around 10,000 for the average. Does that make sense? So it's obviously not real data. Okay. Just get back to where we were. Okay. So another thing we can do, of course, is apply the count function. So what does the count do? What does count? Tells how many observations we have that meet the criteria. So if we're just doing count of item number, what should this number be? If we know we have 31 observations. It should be 31, right? Okay, so we run it, and it is in fact 31. Now, I said earlier that that's useful, but not really that useful. What did I say makes that more useful? When we start to apply the where. So let's go ahead and do some of that. Count item no from inventory where. Now, we can apply any condition we want. Someone throw me a condition. About item number is greater than 15. Okay? So that should be 16 through 31, right? Let's see if this works. Okay? Sure does. Because 16 all the way to 31, how many is that? It's going to be 16 in total. Okay, because greater than 15 is going to start at 16. If we were just going to 30, that would be 15, because 15 plus 15 obviously is 30. We got 31 total rows. So that means it's going to give us 16. Okay, did I lose anyone with any of that? You guys see why the order is very important? Okay, the select statement is vital that you get that order correct. And let's say you forgot the order. Okay, how could you get the order back? Well, it's quite simple. Go to select, and it should tell us the order maybe not under select, maybe it's under having. It's in this tutorial. Yeah, here we go. So we start at select, go from, where, group by, having, and order by. Okay. It is vital that you memorize this. I don't ask you to memorize much. I personally think memorization for most things is silly. Okay, but this is not silly. You'll be a lot quicker if you have this memorized. Does that make sense? So memorize this order. Don't ever forget it, at least not as long as you're in here. So that's just a little bit about the count function. Okay, let's say I wanted to select multiple things. We've done that. But what's cool is we can actually do multiplication and addition, all those sort of arithmetic functions right here inside the select statement. So what this function is doing is selecting item number, and it's also selecting item quantity times item price. And what is this as doing right here? What's the as doing? Boom. So we're casting the name as inventory amount. Okay, what's something better I could call this? We're taking the quantity and multiplying it by the item price. Anything better than inventory amount we could call this? How about inventory value? Is that a little bit better? I think it's better. From the inventory table. Okay, so based off of this, let's take a vote. Who thinks this is going to give us a single thing like we did down here, where it just has 2 columns but only 1 row? Okay, who thinks this is going to give us a row for each of our item numbers? Let's see. Okay, so for each of the item numbers, we're taking item quantity times item price. So that's telling us how much it is worth inside of our current inventory. Makes sense? All right. So let's say we didn't want that. Let's say you guys remember sum product in Excel, where we take 2 different arrays, multiply each of the vectors times each other, and we add up those residuals. Okay, we can do that same exact thing pretty easily in SQL. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to use select sum. So we're using the sum function, and then we're opening up parentheses, and inside those parentheses we're going to do that multiplication. Okay, so we're taking item quantity times item price. That happens first because it's in parentheses, obviously. And then we're adding up all of those together. Okay, and we're getting this, of course, from the inventory table. So now, who thinks this is going to give us 1 row? Okay, who thinks this is going to give us 31 rows? Okay, so it's going to be 1 row, obviously. Okay, so in total, our inventory is worth $6,746,492. Okay, does everyone understand how I got that? Now, let's say I want to do this with an average. Okay, so I'm going to do select. I'm going to get the average item quantity times item price from inventory. Okay, so now instead of getting this sum, this should be this number right here divided by 31, right? If it's not, then something is wrong, isn't it? Okay, so let's just double check that. Get out our good friend, the calculator. Okay, I don't remember the exact number, but, you know, roughly 670 something divided by, let's just call it 2100. Okay, so 31. Is that pretty cool? I think it's fairly cool. It's fairly powerful. Okay, does this take a lot of processing to do? Not a lot at all. Okay. So down here, we have select. the average item price from our inventory table, but we're applying a condition to this. We're only getting the average of the items that have an item number less than 10. So it's going to be the average of the bottom 10 items, right? Okay. So actually the bottom 9 items, because it's less than, not less than, equal to. So when we do that, of course, we get 6,816. Okay. Now, say I didn't want the average item price where the item number was less than 10. Someone walk me through how I would create a select statement to get the maximum item price from our inventory table where the item number is greater than 20. How would I do that? Go for it, Imon. Select max item price from inventory where greater than 20. And like I said, I'm repeating what you're saying because, for the recording, it'll be a lot better. I'm not trying to be obnoxious or anything. So we do that. Of course, it gives us 9,127. It's the most expensive item. Okay? Any questions up to this point? Anything not clear? Amon? Great question. So, one good reason is Excel only supports a total of, I'm about 90% sure it's right around 1,048,000 rows. So could you fathom a situation where a company may have more than that? Easily. Think about Walmart's transactions. Okay, they probably get that many in an hour. I don't know how many transactions Walmart, this corporation, gets an hour, but it's definitely, if they're having a year's worth of transactions, no way they could fit that in a spreadsheet. Now, could they? Okay. Think about McDonald's. Okay. McDonald's has millions and millions served. Okay. They can't fit all that inside of a spreadsheet. That's one reason. Another reason is you can apply a lot more editing and user controls to a database than you can to a spreadsheet. So if you have a spreadsheet and it's stored on a network drive, hypothetically, you can edit it and change it and do whatever you want to it. Okay. So there's not really a great way to have read-only access. Now, is it technically possible? Yeah. Is it pretty? No. With something like SQL, it's very easy to apply user controls to allow certain people to use certain, you can get down to the individual columns even. So a lot better user controls is another reason. It scales a lot better. If you have a spreadsheet that's near the limits for what Excel can handle, like if you have a 500 megabyte spreadsheet, that's going to be, it doesn't matter what computer you're using, it's going to be painfully slow. Whereas I personally have used, 20 gigabyte databases. Not really noticeable slowdown. It's not going to be instantaneous for processing, obviously, with 20 gigabytes worth of data, but it's going to run a lot better. There's also a limit on how many columns you can have in Excel. I think it's 1,024, right around there. Not really that limit inside of, well, there are limits in SQL databases. They're a lot larger and they're a lot more flexible. So those are the main reasons. Excel is fine for doing like tasks on your own. As soon as you start to work with a group, like a database can be a lot easier to share and manage in that way. Great question. Any other questions? Okay, let's do some more stuff with where. So we're selecting the sum of item quantity times item price. Whoops. From the inventory table. Let me get back up to it. I apologize for that. So we're in an inventory table. Where the item number, what does this guy right here mean? Does not equal to. And item number is, this is less than 20. So what this is doing is it's excluding 2. I don't know why we would do this, but this is how we would do it if we wanted to exclude a particular thing. and also item number less than 20. So it's going to look at item number 1, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to 19, right? Skips 2. And that gives us that sum. Okay, let's say I want to double check that. A couple different ways we could do that. First way, actually I already have it right here. So right now, we run this command, or this function, or run this, gives us 4,475,000. Okay, you guys remember that. So when we run just less than 20, should it be more than this or less than this? Should be a little bit larger than this, right? Okay, so it's 4,908,000. Okay, so what does that mean that item 2 should be? Select item quantity times item price from inventory where item no equals what? 2, right? Okay, so this should be right around 20 or somewhere in there. Okay. Yeah, that looks about right. Okay, because we're taking item quantity and item price just for this one case where the item number equals 2. All right, any questions? Okay, a few more things we want to cover. We have the OR operator. Okay, so we're selecting the sum of item quantity times item price from our inventory table where the item number is less than 10 or the item number is greater than 20. Okay, so what is this excluding? If it's less than 10 and greater than 20, what are we excluding? Yeah, Boone. 10 to 20, exactly. Okay, and how'd you get that, Boone? Yeah, exactly. So less than 10 is going to be 9 through 1, and then greater than 20, of course, is going to be 21 through 31, because we have 31 observations. Okay, so that's how we would use OR. So I think that's about all we want to do today. I think we're going to get into basic joins next class. Talk about what those are. Any questions about anything at all? All right, hope you all have a great day. See you all Friday.